So this year, while watching the Hall of Fame, I couldn't get this question out of my mind. And it is a simple question, and yet it has so much meaning. The question was, why does Vince McMahon forgive? This year, as I was watching Jeff Jarrett, I kept being reminded by the story that I heard of Jeff Jarrett holding up Vince McMahon for $500,000 in order to do the job, as it were, to China. And I thought to myself, if someone tried to hold me up for $500,000, they would never step foot within 10 miles of me, let alone shaking their hands, giving them hugs, and presenting them with a Hall of Fame ring. So I thought back to what Jim Cornette, I believe it was Jim Cornette, said when he spoke about Vince McMahon doing business with people that have tried to screw him over time and time again. People like Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, just name anybody. At the end of the day, I mean, Rick Rude, who literally walked out of his company after telling him that he was going to sign a new contract, and after the Montreal Screwjob, literally walked out and appeared on both Nitro and Raw on the same night, was preparing for a return to the WWE at the time of his death. Obviously, that didn't materialize because he passed away, but he was preparing for a return to the WWE at that time. And so Jim Cornette theorized that Vince McMahon's ego was such that he wanted to have people under his thumb. He wanted to have them back in the mix so that way he could feel like they needed him instead of vice versa. But then you look at some of the things like the Hulk Hogan's return, and from the stories that you hear of how he negotiated his return, and they were favorable terms to Hulk Hogan. And so does if Vince McMahon needed Hulk Hogan if Hulk Hogan needed Vince McMahon so badly, why would Vince McMahon then in turn give terms to Hulk Hogan that were very favorable to Hulk Hogan? So other people have theorized that Vince McMahon just does what's best for business, right? It doesn't matter what has happened in the past. If it's good for business now, Vince McMahon is going to do that. So he'll do business again with people like the Ultimate Warrior, Bruno Sammartino, Hulk Hogan, anybody, really. Rick Rude or Lex Luger, even though I don't believe Lex Luger has been back since WCW days. He definitely hasn't been in the Hall of Fame. So when I look at Jeff Jarrett, the person who supposedly held him up for $500,000, receiving this ring, is all smiles and very happy to be back in the mix there in the WWE, especially someone like Jeff Jarrett, who literally went out and created a company to compete with Vince McMahon's company. Obviously, we know how all that turned out. How many of you have watched TNA on Pop TV recently? So is it really an ego thing, wanting to have them back under his thumb? Is it a best for business thing? Maybe he's just a very forgiving guy. I have my own theory on it. And this is what my theory is. I think that Vince McMahon respects strength in people. And when I say that, what I mean is Vince McMahon obviously is a person who does not believe himself to be weak, does not ever want to portray any weakness in himself. And so when he sees someone else who stands up for themselves, even if they're wrong, he respects that. And so even though in business they may part ways, there's a certain level of respect that Vince McMahon may have. And obviously I don't know Vince McMahon, so this could be all a hunk of bullshit. But I think it's the respect that he has from people like a Bill Goldberg, standing up to him and saying, you know what, fuck you, I'm out of here. Or a Jeff Jarrett who says, you know what, you're fucking with me, I want my money, I'm out of here. Or somebody like a Bruno Sammartino, who for years railed against the WWE. having that strength and that courage to stand up to him. I mean, look at Jesse Ventura. He came back for a special and sat there at the booth with Vince McMahon after all the bullshit that the two of them had with each other. There was a lot of lawsuits filed and this and that and so forth. But Jesse was strong in his conviction that he was right, and he followed it through. And I think Vince McMahon respects that. And it's reflected on how these people get treated when they do come back. They get returned back with open arms because Vince loves that. He loves that person who can stand up straight to his face. Kevin Nash said in a shoot interview that Shawn Michaels was the only guy that could walk into Vince McMahon's office and motherfuck him and say, and just stand up to Vince McMahon. And Vince McMahon loved that. And that's why you saw so much favoritism from Vince McMahon to somebody like Shawn Michaels. This is my opinion on that, and I'm sticking to it. You know, I can understand that. An alpha male only wants to be around other alpha males. They do not like weakness. They don't like the smell of weakness. They don't like the taste of weakness. And Vince McMahon is an alpha male. I mean, look what he named his company, Alpha Entertainment. Look at his pastimes. Look at the things he loves to do. Work out. Watch football. He loves that stuff. He loves situations where men are men. That's why you got the Brockuses of the world and those jacked up guys, because he sees that as strength. And Vince McMahon wants to be surrounded by strength. And so, yeah, Jeff Jarrett held him up for a shit ton of money. But you know what? At the end of the day, he knew he wasn't getting a job back in WWE. So he did something that a lot of other wrestlers didn't do. He went out there and created his own vision. He went out there and busted his ass and tried to put together something to compete with Vince McMahon. And Vince McMahon loves it. Wants it, needs it. He wants to feel it. And so, I mean, I can definitely see that in Vince. That's my theory. I'm sticking to it.